Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and today we're doing a quick unboxing of this Crux wiring harness adapter for select Chrysler, Dodge, and Jeep vehicles. This is the SWRCR-59, and this harness allows you to install an aftermarket radio in your select vehicle while retaining the factory steering wheel controls. We're going to go ahead and get this kit all unboxed for you and show you some of its features. Let's get started.
This video is sponsored by Crux Interfacing Solutions, an excellent location for radio replacements, camera interfaces, and more. Check out cruxinterfacing.com to start planning your next install today.
So before we get this thing all pulled apart, again, this fits a lot of different makes and models, generally from 2005 and up. On the back of the box here, you have your main Chrysler, Dodge, and Jeep models that this fits, in addition to also a select model from Mitsubishi and Volkswagen, believe it or not. But again, many different makes and models. The best thing to do if you're wondering if this fits your vehicle, head over to cruxinterfacing.com and use their vehicle fit guide to confirm the right fitment. Now let's go ahead and get this box all pulled apart. Okay, so we have our box all pulled apart here. First and foremost, you'll notice that Crux supplies two different styles of wiring harnesses. Now, depending on your vehicle, you may need the first generation square harness or second generation square harness. You'll notice that they're just ever so slightly different. Now, when you pull out the factory radio, go into the vehicle and see which one will actually fit. That'll be the one that you'll want to wire to your aftermarket radio. Now, in addition to our wiring harness here, we have our rear speaker harness, which we'll cover here in a minute. And then we have our steering wheel control harness. Now, depending on the type of radio that you have, follow your instructions, which we'll review in just a moment. But you'll use either one plug, the second plug, or the wire, depending if you have a Pioneer, a Sony, a Kenwood, a Boss, a Dual, an Alpine, all depends. So double check your instructions to see which wire goes where. And finally, it comes with your main brain box here that makes it happen. On this brain box, it does have these little dip switches so you can indicate what vehicle and what radio you'll be using. So first and foremost, we'll jump into these instructions to go over the details here. The first thing we see is all the feature that this retains, as well as notes depending on if you're using the factory amplified or non-amplified system, meaning did your vehicle come with an upgraded amplified sound system from the factory? It makes special notes of that. Again, all the harnesses and bits and pieces that this kit comes with. Now it does have an installation guide. What's pretty cool about this is Crux has gone out of their way to identify what wire goes where and how to connect it to your chosen aftermarket radio wiring harness. Also goes over which harness goes where for steering wheel controls and the dip switches. Now, this is for the first generation harness. It does it for the second generation harness as well. So just pay close attention at this diagram depending on which harness that you'll use. Now, the next section down here that's super important is based on the amplified version, whether you have a factory amplified system or not, and we'll quickly cover that in this video. If you have the non-amplified version, basically, you wire up your wiring harness color for color, straight across. All your speaker wires will match the speaker wire colors of the Crux harness adapter, so there's no need to make any adjustments here. It's just like any standard wiring harness adapter. However, if you have the factory amplified version of your vehicle, keep note that you may have to do some wiring adjustments per the instructions of this sheet here. So, looking here pretty closely, the factory amplified version uses the rear speakers, the speaker output of the radio, or at least the way it's keyed, to provide signal to the factory amplifier, and that amplifier puts out speakers to all the speakers in the vehicle. So it only uses two channels of input, and they happen to be the rears in the standard wiring configuration. So what Crux has done to kind of counteract that is they have stated if you have the amplified version on your radio wiring harness, you need to connect the white and white black to the rear speaker green and green black of the Crux harness, and then the aftermarket radio's wiring harness gray and gray black, you need to connect it to the Crux's purple and purple black wire, and then for the radio's green, green, black, purple, purple, black, those won't be used. We just won't use the rear speakers of the aftermarket radio just because the amplifier doesn't take additional channels of input. It only takes 2 channels. And so that's why we're hooking up our radio's front 2 channels to the amplifier's input, which happens to be the rear 2 channels going straight across. That's why these colors won't match color for color. Now, if you just did the rear speakers to the matching colors and you have the amplified version, there are notifications or alerts that come through just the front speakers on a lot of radios nowadays, especially if you have like Apple CarPlay and you're taking a call. You won't hear them, or you won't get those alerts because they're going through the channels that aren't hooked up and going through the amplifier. So keep it in mind. Super important for you to realize that if you have the upgraded sound system from the factory in your vehicle and you're using this harness, you need to pay attention to this and match the wiring configuration correctly. Next here, up on the right hand corner, it does provide the diagram depending on the type of radio that you're installing, which dip switch configuration you need to set these to in order for the steering wheel controls to work on your new radio. So kind of keep that in mind there. And again, it goes over the actual cable itself that's up here, which cable you use based on the radio that you're using. So be very, very conscientious of this area or else it won't work for you. Finally, it reiterates the vehicles that this applies to, the harness styles here, whether it's the 1st generation or 2nd generation harness, and a place for notes here on the back. Now, like I said, we just briefly went over the amplified versus non-amplified system. Now, this is your rear harness that corresponds with your factory sound system. If you have the non-amplified version, what you'll do is you're just going to match color for color up with your chosen harness. You don't have to do any special wiring configuration. You'll just plug that on in and you're good to go on either harness. If you do have the factory amplified sound system and you're retaining it, again, what you're going to do is actually wire your front speakers to these ones, so the whites and the grays off your radio into the greens and the purples on this one, and then you'll plug the amplified version into that. And the reasoning is the factory amplifier generally only takes 2 channels of input from the factory, and because it does so, we want to make sure those 2 channels are your front 2 channels, because depending on the radio that you're using, you may have those alerts going through, and we want to make sure they're heard through the system. So pay close attention. Once again, our instructions go over all of that. Now that's about it for this unboxing. Now if you have a vehicle that fits this your make and model, but you don't have the factory steering wheel controls, they make this exact same kit without the steering wheel control function. It's just a smart harness. We have a video on the channel that actually goes over that harness. If you want to check it out, check the card up above, as well as a link down in the description. If you also want to see this harness in action, we'll be installing its counterpart, the non-steering wheel control version, in the Jeep Wrangler. It's essentially this exact same install. Go ahead and check that on out. We'll have a link down in the description as well as a card up above. Well, that's it for this unboxing. If you have any questions, go ahead and post a comment below. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. We post great content here on the channel all the time. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next video.